Adam Potts was just in here, and he said that at the end of the year, he said you can't give up after that year. You can't walk away from that. How many people did you hear that from after how you pitched last season?
Uh, Pretty much everyone. I'll tell you what's really awesome though is to hear that from guys like Ponce, guys like Gomer, um, Woody, that reached out to me and said, "Dude, you can't retire." And I appreciate that so much from the guys who are really on the doorstep of breaking in and making a name for themselves. I mean, they could be selfish guys, but they're not. They're team players, and they want us to succeed, and they want to see me do well, which I really appreciate. So, yeah, I heard that from a fair amount of people. It made me feel pretty nice.
Last
Because
year, given
the year
what the team went
before,
through.
what I heard, well, not the year before, but 2 years before, I heard it was, nice having you around for those years that you used to be a decent pitcher. That was what I heard from, not from so much from teammates, but everyone else. So it's good to have the script kind of flipped a little bit.
Last year, given what you guys went through, and particularly the two starts you had, the first one against the White Sox and then the one on your birthday when the bullpen wasn't available, what did you learn about yourself as far as not just a pitcher, but maybe even as a leader, helping to pilot the team through that?
Well, it's more than just those two starts, too. I think um, with the idea that I was going to finish every start. I almost finished the Cubs game at Wrigley. I almost finished another 7 inning game. I finished another 7 inning game against the Brewers. But it was those starts where you're feeling like, all right, this is what elite pitchers do. They carry their team deep in the game with a great chance to win the game and save the bullpen. And confidence shown from your players behind you, and that kind of feeds into your own confidence as a pitcher. Yeah, all those things kind of work together to kind of help me get it back into a good mental place where I hadn't been in quite a couple or few years.
Jeff Jones, Belleville News Democrat.
Adam, as far as today goes, when you consider what a first outing of spring could look like, is one where you might have to throw a couple extra pitches on the side to hit your ceiling kind of be ideal here?
Absolutely. The rest of the year, that's the plan. To attack hitters and get them to hit the ball on the ground early and get ahead in the count. I mean, my whole career is when I get strikeouts, it's usually when I get a lot of strikeouts, it's because I went deeper into the game. I'm not gonna strike out 2 and 3 guys an inning usually a whole lot of times, but if I go 9, I'll strike out 7, or I'll strike out 8 or 9. When I go 7, I'll strike out 6 or 7 or whatever. And so that's how the strikeout numbers add up to me over the season. When I'm aggressive, that's when I get ahead in the count, and then I can do some really good things. Get them on the defensive. I can strike guys out. I can make them hit the ball in a weak contact. But it all starts with strike one and how you finish them.
There were a couple of curveballs today that the stadium gun had starting with a 6. Is that something that's been worked on right now? Is that fair to say? Will velocity decrease maybe?
That's something I tinker with every now and then. Those were strike ones. Later in the count, after I've showed him a slow one, maybe I'll bust a 76 out, or, spin it a little bit harder here and there. But strike one, I can't imagine, even if they're facing me for the 400th time in a row, it's going to be hard to sit on a 68 mile an hour curveball. 66 mile an hour. KK just came over and goes, 68, not bad. Tomorrow I'm going to try to beat it. So we got a little competition in-house too, where we're working with. But I think it's cool when you can change speeds, change locations. It makes it a lot more complex for the hitter.
Randy Carricker, ESPN 101 St. Louis.
Hi, Adam. How you doing?
All right, Randy, how are you?
Doing well. Hey, along those lines, what you were just talking about, there's obviously a difference between a thrower and a pitcher. Are you a better pitcher now than you ever have been your entire career?
I don't know. I used to be a pretty good pitcher too, man. 2014 was, in my mind, the height of my pitching ability as far as making pitches, doing different things. 2013, I felt the strongest on the mound that I ever had felt. 2009 and 10, I really felt compact, and my delivery was very consistent, and I was consistent on the mound. But 2014, I was 2 steps ahead of everyone usually and was able to make some pitches. So I'm certainly a better pitcher now than I was a few years ago. I'm getting back into a lot of the things that I used to do really well. And I think a part of that is just knowing yourself as a pitcher, knowing who I am, knowing what I'm going to bring to the table, and not trying to do too much with it. I think for a few years there, when I started to lose a little bit of my gas pedal, I was fighting, trying to keep up with, a Carlos or Lance Lynn or somebody who was throwing harder than I was, that was doing outs, making outs differently than I was making outs, and I tried to be somebody that I wasn't, maybe a little bit too much sometimes, and started being more of a thrower than a pitcher, got away from what made me a good pitcher in the first place. So we're getting back to some of the things I used to do really well.
When you talk to the young pitchers on this staff, do you ever bring up that sweet spot like you talked about 2014, where you're at the height of your physical and mental abilities?
Well, that's the key. I mean, that one thing I'm working with a few of our younger starters is knowing who you are, but using the fire that you have inside of you to do cool things with it, rather than letting the fire burn up everything around you. It's a cool place to be when you're young and you have tons of ability and you got all this moxie that you want to go prove to the world. That's a great spot to be in, but you got to be kind of under control in doing that. So those are kind of some of the things I'm working with.
Okay, Derek Gould.
Yeah, 2 questions, if you permit me. One kind of coming off after that. After Jack's outing here in spring, you spent some time with him talking out there on the field, and I know that's pretty regular, but what were some of the things you were telling him about how to build away from or on that start?
We had a great talk. Continued on the rest of that day, continued until today, actually. We had a really great talk today. So those kinds of things never stop. When you get to be an older player and you've seen some things and know what it takes, you can never stop teaching. That's the most important thing inside the clubhouse. If you're going to have a healthy clubhouse atmosphere, you can never stop trying to share what you've learned and what you've been through and what helped you go and what you've seen others have success with, and try to get people over the hump as fast as possible. Jack's in a spot right now where he's, everybody knows in the game that he's a potential superstar waiting in the wings to be a Cy Young contender year in, year out. And so now we just got to hone a little bit, and he's working on that. I wouldn't want to share too much about it because I don't know if it's something he wants to talk about or not. So, but it was a great conversation, very, very fruitful on both sides. And what I told him too was that those conversations help me also. Good reminders for me, but they keep me young. They keep me paying attention. They keep me still trying to learn the game. And when you're learning the game, that's sometimes when you're the best when you're the best teacher of the game. When you stop learning, you think you've got everything figured out. Sometimes that's when you're not as good a teacher anymore.
The last question, we haven't had a chance to really talk with you here this spring, and it is the first spring with the Cardinals that you actually considered going elsewhere. What has that been like here in Jupiter as you've returned to home, basically for spring? Does it feel at all different because your eyes, looked elsewhere?
No, it feels completely normal, honestly. What is interesting is every now and then this spring training I'll see somebody that I know their name, just from being here forever, and say, hey, how you doing? How's your family? How's the off season? Blah, 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 and have normal conversation and I walk away with that conversation going, if I had gone somewhere else, I wouldn't have known anybody. I wouldn't have known so-and-so's family and what their off season was like. It would have been a totally different start. Now, I'll be honest, part of that seemed kind of interesting to me, seemed kind of a new adventure, but I'm liking the new adventure we're having inside the same clubhouse at the moment. That seems like a cool one for me.
Rob Raines, St. Louis sports pitcher.
Adam, despite all the fact that you've done this for such a long time, is there still something special about the first start of the spring in your mind? You go out there and start this all over again?
Yeah. I'll tell you what was really cool is I have, there's timing zones where I need to be in this spot before a game, and then I need to progress into this spot to be ready to get into this spot before I can go out and perform. And inevitably, the first time out there before you really can learn how to control your emotions again, you know, and I've made this mistake countless times in the past. You go, oh, the heck with it, I'm just gonna go, and you know, I'm just ready to rock, and then you just walk outside, and then you start throwing a little bit too early, and then you're like, man, I'm too early, now what am I gonna do? And it was fun to have those same kind of feelings come back today, but also to kind of squash it a little bit and be like, all right, I hear you, body, like I feel you trying to get going and do things you're not ready to do yet. Just relax, it's the first start, you're gonna feel, I mean, I was talking through all this with myself, it was really fun. And I made myself smile even thinking about, all right, remember that time where you just said the heck with it and walked out there and you started stretching, like, oh, I'll just go ahead and do it out there on the field and I'll just throw a little bit more in the bullpen, but then inevitably, you know, when you step on the bullpen, you got a little bit more adrenaline that first start that you hadn't had all off season, so then you get ready even faster and then you're like, oh man, now I'm gonna just, so it was really cool to think back through a lot of experiences I've had and learn from it.
Okay, one last one for Adam. Zach Silver, MLB.com.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. Adam, since you brought him up, I'm curious, what did you learn from a guy like Gomber, and what do you think a team like the Rockies would see in him and, you know, want that to be kind of a central return for a trade like they're not a trade? What did you learn from him over these past 6 years or so?
Have I been with Gomber for 6 years?
I don't know if it's been that year, but
I don't think it's been 6
Drafted
years.
in 2014.
Huh?
He was drafted in 2014, so maybe 4 or 5 years. A little less.
Yeah, he's only been a few though in big league camp, you know. So, but he's a great competitor. He's got great stuff. He's got a great curveball. And one thing I talked to him about is because I've had some success at Coors, is you can still throw that curveball there. Don't buy into the fact that the air is thin and you can't pitch like you always have. You got to make a little bit of adjustments here and there. But you know, when you start believing that you can't pitch there, then you can't. So. I don't claim to be an expert on pitching in Colorado, but it is fun to talk through things like that with a young player who's very talented. He's got a great fastball. He's got a great cutter that he added 2 years ago, and now he's working that changeup and breaking ball too. He's very talented. He's got a great arm. He's got a good mindset to pitch, and he wants to compete. So that's going to be a good addition for the Rockies for sure.